What's up guys? Today I'm going to be going over my thoughts on the M&P 4¼ inch thousands of rounds later. I'm going to be going over what I've done to this gun and what my future plans are for it. You guys have demanded I go over the M&P specifically in my comments and all of my other videos, so that's what I'm going to focus on today. So I'm going to make this a review / mod list, and then we're going to take it out to the range so you guys can see how this gun runs. I also want to say I really appreciate all the support you guys have been showing on my other videos. I'm pretty lucky because every time I drop a video, you guys put in your 2 cents in a pretty respectful manner. Some people agree with what I say and others disagree, but I like the conversations, and seeing other people's opposing viewpoints is actually not a bad thing. So it's cool that I can provide this content to educate and at the same time be educated in return. But let's get into the video. So what drew me into getting an M&P? When I was looking for a new handgun, I wanted to find companies that were reputable and vetted by the gun community. So of course, Glock, CZ, Smith & Wesson, Canik, they were all on my radar on the get-go, but that's not to say there aren't other companies that provide quality handguns. We live in a time where there are so many good handguns available to us, and at the end of the day, it just comes down to your personal preference. So when I was going through the companies, I deduced it down to Smith & Wesson and Walther, and that was because they both had that grip angle that I was looking for. I wanted to try something new coming from Glock, and I heard that the Glocks can be pretty aggressive with the grip angle. I didn't really notice it, but at the same time, I didn't shoot anything else. I went with Smith because they've been around since the 1800s, same as Walther, and they've both been making reliable firearms for the masses. And I've heard a lot of positive things about the M&P, so I decided to pull the trigger and get one. Coming straight out of the box, the M&P provided me with a few things that I really enjoyed. One being a more natural point of aim due to the grip angle only being 18 degrees. Coming from Glock, that was definitely an adjustment from the Glock's 22-degree grip angle. When I first started shooting this gun, I found that I would overcompensate my wrist cant and point the M&P far below the target when presenting the gun. But when I relaxed and just pulled the gun up without adding any input, my sights would line up pretty close to where I was looking, and I really liked that. It felt more natural and freed up more thinking room to focus on other fundamentals. Now, this isn't going to be a full video of me bashing Glocks. I still have my Glocks, and I think both guns have their benefits and downfalls. For example, I find that my Glock 45 shoots a little softer and flatter than my M&P, and I'll say that every day because I've shot thousands of rounds through each one, and the Glock always tracks smoother in my opinion. But recoil impulse is such an objective topic that it really comes down to each person and how they perceive it. Yes, I think my Glock tracks flatter and smoother, but I feel more in control with my M&P due to its ergonomics. Another thing that I like the M&P straight out of the box is that they provide you with metal sights. I like running backup irons, even though some people say it's completely unnecessary nowadays. Red dots are the future, but it never hurts to have a backup plan. And lastly, I actually like the trigger. I say liked because I ended up changing it, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. So I've done a few things to this gun while trying not to compromise the reliability aspect. I'll start with the weapon mounted light. I'm running the Surefire X300, and it's an amazing light. As you can see, it's been through a lot and it still continues to run. This is the B model, meaning you have to screw the light onto the frame directly. The A variant is more convenient with the quick detach feature, but I've seen many videos of the light flying off the guns due to the latch failing, so I went with the B version just to be safe. This light produces 1,000 lumens and 11,000 candela. For those that might not know what lumens and candela are, lumens is how bright your light source is, and candela is pretty much how far you want that light to reach. Now, beam pattern plays a role in this, but I'm just oversimplifying for the sake of understanding. The light is amazing and can really light up a dark room. I've actually had to room clear with this light before, and I'm really happy I had it when I did. Speaking of which, weapon mounted lights seem to be a highly controversial topic for some reason. If you want a light on your firearm, add it. If you don't. I don't know why people are getting mad at others for having something on their own personal gun. Me personally, I carry a pocket flashlight as well as a weapon mounted light on my firearm. For obvious reasons, the pocket flashlight is used every day, looking into dark areas, rooms, looking for small screws under my car, or to light up a dark spot in a tight area. The uses are endless, but I prefer to have a weapons mounted light specifically because I want both hands on the gun as much as possible given the circumstances. Shooting with one hand is something I'd like to avoid as much as possible. I've shot one hand plenty of times, and I think we can all agree two hands will always trump one in regards to recoil management. I've seen various techniques with people shooting with a gun in one hand and a light in the other. And again, I just don't see the benefits over having both hands on the gun using a weapon mounted light. I hope that we can agree to disagree on this topic because I know people sit on both sides of the line, but that's just my opinion. Next thing I added to this gun was a red dot. I had a specific criteria going into this decision. I wanted something that was somewhat robust, but also had a solar option. I pursued solar because I wanted the capability to use my red dot even if times got hard and batteries were hard to come by. I run the Wesson 407C because of the two prior points. I do have an Aimpoint Acro P2 in my possession, but not having that solar option kind of deterred me away from putting it on this gun specifically. That being said, I have zero issues with the P2 and I find it to be very reliable. Some of you might wonder why I didn't opt for the 507C. The only difference between these two dots is that the 507C has the option for that 32 MOA ring around the dot. I don't favor the ring dot combo because it gets pretty distracting when shooting. When the gun's stationary, it looks really cool, but we aren't adding these optics onto our guns to be stationary. I know a few people that bought the 507C and only run the standalone dot reticle. So spending the extra money for something I'm not going to use went against logic. All right, the trigger. I added the Apex tactical flat trigger off of a passing recommendation actually. When I first purchased the M&P, I ran it with the red dot and a light, and that was about it. I shot a few competitions with it in that configuration and I had zero problems. But then at one of the matches, someone approached me and asked if I was going to add the Apex trigger to the gun. I've heard of how great the Apex trigger was in the M&P specifically, but up until that point, I hadn't looked much into it. So we had a small conversation and he pretty much gave me a glowing review about his experience with the trigger. Literally that night, I went home and started watching all kinds of videos on the Apex trigger. Next thing you know, I'm adding it to my cart, only to be more impressed than I originally planned. This trigger is amazing. You can customize how light and heavy you want the trigger to be with all the springs they provide with it. I put my trigger to 4 pounds because I find that to be the sweet spot between not being too heavy and not being too light. Most duty guns run their triggers around 5 to 7 pounds and competition guns run around 2 to 4 pounds. So 4 pounds seems to be enough resistance so I don't break a shot when I don't want to, but light enough to run it as fast as I want. You can run it as heavy as you want, but why not give yourself a little advantage? This trigger has been reliable and consistent throughout its entire life on my gun, and I've run thousands of rounds through it. The take-up is nice and the break is crisp. The reset is pretty short as well, and it's just an overall amazing addition to this gun. And lastly, I actually switched out the slide release lever on here. Originally, it came with an extended slide release on this model, the Optic Ready model, and it was really cutting up my hands. So I actually bought the OEM version of the slide release and I installed it myself, and it's made shooting this way more pleasurable. Like I said before, that comfort factor really plays a role when you're shooting lots and lots of rounds, so keep that in mind. And as a side note, this gun does come with different size palm swells. I run a medium because I feel like that's where I get the best purchase, but you can customize it to your own liking. And believe it or not, that's all I've done to this gun. With that being said, I do have a few more things I'd like to add on to the M&P before I consider it finished. The first thing I want to address is the grip texture. The grip texture on the M&P is actually amazing, but it doesn't go high enough for my liking. I want to raise the grip texture up so that my support hand can make full contact with it throughout my grip. I grip a little higher than the average person, so this is more of a preference upgrade as opposed to a necessary one, but it's just something I want to do just because I want to have more control of my firearm with the grip that I use. Another upgrade I want to add to this gun is a mag well. My reloads with this gun have gotten a lot better, but as you guys can see, there is no flare to the bottom of the frame. Glocks have a slight flare at the bottom and it makes it more forgiving when reloading. This gun requires you to reload perfectly every time. Obviously, this can be trained, but again, why not make your life a little easier? For serious USPSA and IDPA matches, magwells aren't allowed unless you're shooting open division, but I use competitions to gauge my skill level and to track my progress over time. So at a local match, they don't really care what you run. I plan on getting the Floyd's custom EDC magwell. It'll have enough flare to help with faster reloads under stress, and it gives me a little bit more of that purchase on the bottom of the gun. I've got big hands, so the extra purchase will be nice. If you do end up going with Floyd's custom magwell, you will have to buy the base plates for your mags in order for them to fit properly. But from what I've seen, everyone's had nothing but good experience running them, so I'm not worried one bit on reliability. Lastly, I do want to try out a red dot with a bigger window. I hear the difference is very noticeable, and I want to try that out to see how much of a difference it makes. I'm personally looking at the Holosun 507 competition. The window looks huge. I'm familiar with the Holosun hardware, and it still comes with that shake awake technology. Now the 507 comp doesn't have solar capabilities, so I'll probably just pack up my 407C and keep it on standby if I ever run out of batteries in a post-apocalyptic world. But now that I've gone over everything I've done to the gun and my future plans, let's head over to the range so I can show you guys how it runs. All right, so we're out here at the outdoor range. We're gonna run a couple of drills just so I can show you guys the recoil impulse of the M&P. I'm gonna start off with a couple of build drills and we'll just move on from there. And I'll do some close-ups and some slow motion so you guys can see everything that's going on. So that's all I have for you guys today. Remember, none of this matters if you're not going out and training, and you should be striving to become a better shooter than you were yesterday. And don't feel discouraged by what you see on Instagram and YouTube. Your path is yours, and you will progress on your own time. Just make sure you're holding yourself accountable. All right, guys, I'll catch you guys in the next one.